Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Planning Committee. Thanks for everyone attending this evening on Tuesday, 5th of December 2023. My name is Councillor Alex Hilton. I'm the Vice Chair of this committee, and in the absence of Councillor June Molyneux this evening, I will be chairing the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. If you're in attendance as a member of the public who's registered to speak, please note that you'll have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. The legal officer here will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or in the middle of making a point, wind up within a few seconds and finish speaking. Otherwise, your microphone may be muted. To assist in following this evening's proceedings, a pack has been prepared and is available online, which contains each item's report, plans, presentations, slides, and any addendum. After officers have presented the report, I'll ask any speakers to make their representations and then invite members to make comments. When you speak, please raise your hand, and when invited to speak, remember to use your microphone and reference the paragraph number if possible, which will allow everyone to follow your point. Please keep in mind that some people require closed captions and/or lip reading to follow the proceedings, so please speak slowly and clearly. Please can everyone ensure the phones are turned to silent? We're not expecting a fire alarm this evening, so if it sounds, please exit the way you came in. So apologies, I believe, have been received from Councillors June Molyneux and Danny G, and Councillor Adrian Lowe and Councillor Arjun Singh are substitutes. Okay, so declarations of any interests. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect to the matters contained in this agenda. If you do have a pecuniary interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before the business starts to be discussed. You do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence the decision on matters. So, do I have any declarations of any interest? Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. Could I declare a non-pecuniary interest in item 3A, but I will not take part in the discussion for that item, but I have registered to speak as a ward councillor.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Singh.
And then same again, can I declare a pecuniary interest on item 3D?
Non-pecuniary on 3D. Okay, lovely. I will just change the order of speakers at that point to allow you to both leave the chamber. Sorry, switching my own microphone off there. Right, so minutes of the meeting, Tuesday, 14th of November. Would anybody like to propose those? Councillor Whittam, second. Councillor Platt. All in favour? Lovely, unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so just a bit of housekeeping. So planning applications to be determined. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for the planning committee are as follows. The officers here will summarise the report. Registered speakers will be invited to speak, typically in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, and then the applicant or their agent. All speakers will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes, apart from ward councillors who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against the application, as chair, I will consider granting the applicant and his or her representative a time extension as required. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings. If any member wishes to make a proposal for officer recommendations or an amendment, please do make it clear that you're actually doing that as well. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 3A. This is land to the west side of Blackburn Road, Chorley. There is an update on the addendum. Ian will present the item. So the officer recommendation remains that planning permission is granted subject to conditions and a section 106 agreement to secure a public transport contribution and a travel plan support contribution, the final details of which will be delegated to the Director of Planning and Development in consultation with the Planning Committee Chair and Vice Chair. So registered speakers, Councillor Lowe has already expressed he's going to speak as a ward councillor, so therefore I will take him first and then he will leave the chamber. Following that, I have got an objector, Keith Malloy. Keith, lovely, thank you. Supporter, Chris Maguire. Lovely, you may need to come to somewhere where there's a microphone, Mr. Maguire. So, yeah, okay, thank you. And I've got then a ward councillor, Councillor Jean Sherwood, who I can see is here. Lovely. So in that case, we'll go to officers to present the report. Ian, it's now over to you. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for an employment development comprising a range of buildings to provide industrial, storage and office accommodation with access taken from the A674. The application site comprises agricultural land between the A674 Millennium Way and the Leeds and Liverpool Canal to the west and Blackburn Road to the east. The application site forms part of a mixed-use allocation as defined by the Chorley local plan, which is required to deliver 14.1 hectares of employment development over the plan period. The site also forms part of an area that's specifically identified by Policy 9 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy to provide sub-regionally significant development for employment. The proposal therefore responds directly to what is envisaged by the Chorley local plan and would contribute to delivering the employment aims and objectives of the development plan, against which the application must be determined in accordance with Section 38 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. The application site is visually prominent with views from the canal, motorway junction and A674 and Blackburn Road. The development will be set out in rows along 3 development platforms, stepped down from Blackburn Road towards the canal and Millennium Way. The layout of the development will be relatively dense, which would make an efficient use of this part of the allocated land. Whilst the buildings will be of a design typical of modern employment developments, the smaller units would occupy the higher platform adjacent to Blackburn Road and will be set down to a significantly lower level relative to the highway, which would reduce their prominence. Green roofs would be used on blocks A and B adjacent to Blackburn Road, which would help to soften the visual impact from that receptor, whilst peripheral landscaping would be retained and enhanced to the boundaries of the site, which would help to filter views from outside of the site as required by Policy EP3. Overall, the appearance of the development will be appropriate for the planned use of the site and will be typical of a large-scale employment development of sub-regional significance. The proposed buildings will be set at a lower level and separation distance relative to the residential properties along Blackburn Road, such that there will be no harm to the amenity of residents through their physical presence. A noise survey has been submitted in support of the proposed development, which has been considered by the Council's Environmental Health Officer, who raises no objection, subject to the hours of operation being controlled, amongst other controls, and the implementation of a construction management plan to manage the way in which the development takes place during the development phase or phases. The highway impacts of the development have been assessed in great detail by Lancashire County Council as local highway authority and national highways. The impact on the local highway network is considered to be significant. However, it's considered that the impact on the capacity of the highway network can be mitigated through a package of measures to be secured through conditions, a Section 106 agreement and through the Section 278 process. On this basis, the highway impacts of the development are considered to be acceptable. Members will note that the applicant has agreed to fund the public transport improvements. However, the level of contribution does remain to be agreed. Drainage impacts have been assessed by the lead local flood authority and are considered to be acceptable, subject to the provision of a detailed drainage strategy, whilst United Utilities are satisfied, subject to the requirement of details of a means of ensuring that the sewers within the site boundary are protected from any damage through development. The proposed development would not harm the significance of any designated and non-designated heritage assets. The ecological impacts of the development can be mitigated against through an on-site landscaping and via a scheme for the provision of off-site biodiversity improvements. A Phase 1 preliminary risk assessment has been reviewed by the Council's Environmental Health Officer, and further geotechnical details would be required by condition, and these would influence the final specification for the development in relation to the development platforms and retaining structures. All of the matters are acceptable subject to conditions and are covered in detail within the committee report. Overall, the proposed development will clearly contribute to economic growth within Chorley, supporting the provision of employment, which is an economic and social benefit that carries significant weight. The proposal meets with the expectations of the Chorley local plan, fulfilling the requirements of the allocation for employment development. The local plan was found sound following public examination and was adopted by the council in 2015. The development must be determined in accordance with the development plan unless there are material considerations that indicate otherwise. There are no unacceptable detrimental impacts from the proposal that cannot be mitigated, and it's therefore recommended that planning permission be granted subject to a 106 agreement with the wording of the clause for securing the public transport contribution to be delegated to the Director of Planning and Development in consultation with the Planning Committee Chair and Vice Chair and subject to the conditions set out on the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you very much, Ian. So I'm going to go slightly off piece with the usual order, and I'm going to go to you, Councillor Lowe, to make your representations as a ward councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And just before I start my comments, just to clarify, the reason I had to declare an interest was that within 2 weeks of the application being submitted, I objected to this, so I am precluded from taking part other than as a ward councillor. I just wanted to get that clear. Thank you for allowing me to speak, both as a ward councillor, but also as a nearby resident on the Hartwood estate. We are approaching the first anniversary when this application was first submitted and validated. I want to make some general comments before addressing the main planning considerations. There are 159 objections from residents, and at first it was surprising that United Utilities comments have not been addressed, even though the letter dated the 10th of August stated that they did at that time object. I note from today a further letter has been received from United Utilities suggesting conditions. I also note the comments from the Canal and Rivers Trust. Members will note that the site has had a checkered planning history, and I refer members to especially paragraphs 124 to 128 and also page 36 of your documentation. This amended application refers to 69 units down from the original 75. However, I do point members to the construction health and safety plan that was submitted on the 30th of November that referred to 73 units. It is highly regrettable that community engagement was not done at an earlier stage, and even with these so-called amendments, in my opinion, they don't go far enough. Members will note that there is already existent planning permission for residential development on part of this site, and it is also identified in the upcoming local plan for residential development. My question, I know it's a side issue, Chair, but if approved this evening, does this mean that the council will need to look elsewhere to make up the numbers? But I appreciate we are asked to consider, or you're asked to consider, the application in front of you. Reference is made in the report that there is still scope for some residential development to the south of the site. However, LCC made clear that access could not be made through this site. There's been an apparent disregard for local residents, with work taking place, devastating wildlife, and so-called preparation for this application to allow engineering work to take place. My last general comment is that it's not a mixed-use application, but if allowed, will create an expansive industrial estate. I want to move on to what I regard as the planning considerations, Chair. The traffic and access. The proposed mitigation measures do nothing to address the already existing problems in the area. These measures were first suggested years ago when planning was first granted, and more recently for the approval of the business park, but they've not been enacted. I refer members to paragraph 159 of your papers. As a resident on Hartwood Estate, I know LCC's comments that the situation in the area is complex. Residents take their lives in their own hands on a daily basis, trying to exit the estate, and heaven help if there was need for emergency vehicles to use the estate. So-called signalised improvements, queue detectors and keep clear signs have never been the answer, in my opinion, and I have to agree with a comment that was made, what planet do highways live in? Going on to parking. Parking is a problem, and I don't think that these proposals meet local plan standards. The site layout doesn't meet LCC adoption standards, and I fear that there will be overspill on nearby roads, including Blackburn Road. Going on to landscape and design. There is no design code, and if approved, it will have a detrimental effect on the area. In conjunction with the business park, it doesn't give a great impression of the area. In my opinion, it will be a blot on the landscape. Talking about landscaping, even with this amended proposal, it's unacceptable to residents who will have to wait up to 5 years before the site is screened. There's a potential issue with lighting, and there's been problems whilst the business park has been developed. In conclusion, if approved, I consider that this will lead to an overdevelopment of the site. It's ill thought out, does nothing to create a mixed use for the entire area, and it's extremely regrettable that there is no support from LCC Highways nor National Highways to address this application.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. I'm just going to bring Adele back to address some of the issues before you leave the chamber, and then you'll leave at that point. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I'm mindful that you've asked a couple of questions, and I'm also conscious that you're going to be leaving the room. So I just wanted to respond to a couple of the points that you'd raised. First of all, in terms of housing numbers, the allocation coming forward is again from mixed use, and there would still be capacity within the wider allocation for the delivery of housing. And again, the highway improvements have been set out in conditions on the Botany Bay site, which we wouldn't expect to be delivered at this point in time in any event, because that would be unreasonable that they're delivered in advance of the development actually being operational. There is discussion ongoing with LCC Highways in terms of formulating and agreeing a Section 278 agreement. So the highway improvements that are proposed are secured via a consented scheme that is currently being implemented, and it's proposed to replicate those improvements and secure them by the imposition of a further condition as part of this that again is reported in the papers. So that they were the 2 points that I wanted to come back to you on, so members of the committee were clear on those issues.
Thanks, Adele.
Lovely, thank you, Adele. Councillor, I'll give you a minute so to leave the chamber, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. Thanks. Mr. Malloy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking to you today as a resident of Wealton, but also speaking on behalf of a group of residents in Wealton and also the Knowley residents group that I've been working with throughout this process. I just want to start with a quote here today with from the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission. Beauty is an essential resource to redeem our suffering, expand our joy, and live more in accordance with our dignity. It is not a subjective whim, but a universal human need. And that was from Roger Scruton, who was the author of the Commission report. I just want to be clear that in all my conversations with the residents and as a member of the planning profession, I absolutely accept the allocation of this site for development. There's no question about that in my conversations with your staff, with the developer and with the residents. I want to suggest that the fundamental concerns of residents in the local community lie in the proposed form of this development in 2 key areas: the scale of development and consequence for the appearance, parking, internal landscaping, and in particular, boundary treatments to Blackburn Road, and also with reference in the access of Blackburn Road as part of the construction management plan. In the officer's report, there appears to be recognition that proposal represents an overdevelopment of this site, a relatively high density of buildings with limited internal landscape, and of more concern, the comment that at such density, this would reduce the pressure on releasing alternative land for similar such development. To suggest that this important and much valued local site should be a sacrificial lamb to protect sites elsewhere from further employment development pressure is completely unacceptable and has created significant upset in our local community. This issue is one of density of development and raises a number of serious concerns. That the overdevelopment of the site has a consequence of poor design, not allowing for landscaping within the development, inflicting a lifetime of working in a poor environment for those unfortunate to have to work on this site in the future. that the overdevelopment is a driver for parking standards very significantly below the approved Chorley local plan standard, and inevitably consequence of which will be off-site parking and nuisance to residents of Knowley. The poor design and wrapper approach to landscaping will absolutely not disguise the fact that these proposals are poorly designed on an overdeveloped site in what is probably Chorley's principal gateway into the borough. The overdevelopment of the site is also squeezing out the opportunity for a high quality, effective boundary treatment to Blackburn Road. The report suggests the proposal complies with your policy BN1E. However, I would suggest that you need to reject this assertion, and indeed this should be a principal reason for rejecting this application, where in particular this proposal is not compliant in regard to policy BNE1A. The proposal should not have a significant detrimental impact on the surrounding areas, where this clearly, the proposal does have a significant detrimental impact. And policy BN1C, the layout, design and landscaping should be of high quality and respect the character of the site and the local area, where clearly this proposal does not respect the character of this site in any way whatsoever. The report references NPPN and
the time's up. Thank you so much for making your representations there. Okay, so I have a next speaker, a supporter, Mr. Chris Maguire. I think we're just going to do a bit of shuffling around with the chairs. You'll need to just press the button on the microphone. So, yeah, just so that it goes round.
Oh, right, okay. Okay, just press the timer. Thanks very much. First things first, thanks very much to the Chair, the Vice Chair and the members of the committee for allowing me to say a few words today about this development. I should also say thank you to Mr Malloy as well and the residents. I come in from the capacity as a business and economic development, and that's where my support comes from. Just by way of background, I used to be the editor of the Chorley and Leyland Guardian for 6 years until 2012. As well as living in the borough since 2016, I continue to work as a journalist, including as the executive editor of 2 business websites. I've known Tim Knowles since my days at the Chorley and Leyland Guardian. I've recently done some consultancy work for FI Real Estate Management and hosted an event on their behalf earlier this year. I'll leave others to discuss the planning side of things, but I do know this site has been allocated in the local plan for a number of years, as discussed earlier. I'm a huge advocate of Chorley. It's the reason I've lived in the borough for as long as I have. I really welcome a scheme like the Market Walk redevelopment, which helped attract big name retailers to the town. I spent much of the day at Strawberry Fields Digital Hub, which has been a real game changer in attracting dynamic businesses to the borough. I've been with Panache Cruises today at Strawberry Fields, which has generated £20 million turnover in its 3rd year in business. Moreover, it employs 55 people, including 45 from Chorley, many of whom are young apprentices who I met today. Redmore Health moved to Strawberry Fields from Preston a couple of years ago. Last year, they received significant investment from Palatine Private Equity, one of 13 offers, and today they employ 40 people. Now, the name hasn't been revealed yet, but at Botany Bay Business Park, they've secured their first tenant, thereby keeping 80 jobs in the borough, and they're talking to dozens of other businesses like that. What the Market Walk redevelopment and Strawberry Fields Digital Hub teach us is that if you want to attract and retain the best companies and talent, you have to create the right space for them. That's what FI Real Estate are trying to do at Botany Bay and Botany Hill. And now I love Chorley, I generally do. And it pains me to think of talent and investment leaving this region. Where I think I can provide some insight is in my role hosting business events. I've hosted over 1,000 events across the UK, ranging from intimate roundtables to business breakfasts to full-scale conferences and award ceremonies. I recently hosted a series of roundtables across Chorley and South Ribble, and other than the difficulties with recruitment, the biggest challenge identified related to the lack of suitable premises. If companies can't find available premises to expand into or relocate into in Chorley, they'll move elsewhere. It's that simple. Looking at the bigger picture, we hear a lot about levelling up and the Northern Powerhouse. People will have different views on how successful they've been, but less than 2 weeks ago, Lancashire finally secured a devolution deal. Now, if my memory serves me correct, I think there used to be billboards along the M61 saying Chorley, first for business. They might still be there. If Chorley is truly first for business, it needs developments like this on sites like this. Boxall Village created unprecedented levels of housing in the borough, but we need local businesses and jobs to try and keep local residents in the borough and grow our economy. That's why I'm supporting this application today from a business and economic development perspective.
Thank you so much. Okay. I'll just bring Adele back in and then we'll go to Councillor Sherwood after that. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify a point that's been made in terms of what may or may not have been teased out of the phraseology of some of the wording of the officer report. And just to clarify for the avoidance of doubt, paragraph 52 sets out that the proposed development is a fairly dense development. It doesn't actually advocate that it's an overdevelopment of the site. And, you know, members will be aware of the need to make efficient use of land. So I just want to clarify that the officers aren't suggesting that this is an overdevelopment. The proposal would result in overdevelopment of the site. It would result in a dense development that is accepted, but that doesn't necessarily equate to overdevelopment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adele. Councillor Sherwood, over to you to make your representations.
Thank you, Chair.
It's the timer, Councillor. It's okay. It's a more exotic timer than normal, but it's the timer. Don't worry. Okay, Councillor Sherwood, over to you.
Thank you,
know
Chair.
what the timer sounds like.
Chorley does not have the infrastructure to support this proposed development. Both the M61 and the A674 are often gridlocked, and the Hartwood traffic lights frequently do not work. Traffic and noise pollution from HGVs will be increased next to what was a beautiful canal area and a natural solution to flooding in the area. The proposed aesthetics are an eyesore, considering this is the road into Chorley. It may bring some jobs, but it may well put some people off from settling here. During this preliminary work, the wildlife has been decimated. On page 12, paragraph 15, it accepts that the land had a range of wildlife, including nesting lapwings, which are a red species. What measures were used to protect them? Because it's expected that some measures were taken. Residents are also concerned about the scale of the development, limited parking, and what appears to be peripheral landscaping that can in no way begin to replace the abundance of wildlife and biodiversity that has already been destroyed. Moving away from housing development will result in other green land being used, slowly eroding the natural beauty of the area and changing the character of the town. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. You want to come back on anything? Okay, members, it is now over to you. So, Karen, Councillor Derbyshire, I forgot your surname then, I'm so sorry.
And I've read them all. I've read everything that's come in my inbox. I've read everything to going. I've visited the site. And some of the objections, like, for example, there'll be a loss of visual amenity. I don't actually know what one of those are. I actually I look out of my back window and I see flats. I look out my front window, I see houses. You know, as I think the vast majority of people in Chorley do, or they may see a front garden and a back garden. But as for a visual amenity, I think we're talking about ideal home examples now of actual living in houses. Yes, I appreciate, and Blackburn Road, it's got some sentimentality for me because my great-grandparents lived there, but time moves on. And I'm very much aware of the commercial viability of this business, the fact that it is so ideally located next to motorways. The A674 is perfectly developed to actually accommodate these buildings. And as for tin sheds, I think some people have called them, there's a lot of emotive language involved in here. But as a person who's lived in Chorley my whole life, and actually lived in lots of different parts of Chorley, and I do feel some empathy with those people who long enjoyed beautiful views and beautiful location, but time moves on. And actually, Chorley needs this business. It needs economic development. And, you know, we're very mindful that we need more housing as well. But some of the things that we've been objecting to recently have been on safeguarding grounds and on the things that actually it isn't really viable. But this is. This actually is a perfect location to build these, not sheds, these buildings. And actually, they're even trying to facilitate the colouring to put them into to match the landscape. Now, if you go on the M61, either way, Botany Bay used to be beautiful, but it's not anymore. It's got hundreds of lorries parked on it. And before that, it was a disgusting looking car park. You know, I mean, so, and now we're saying, oh, well, we're going to lose some fields. We've still got fields. There's still going to be lots of fields around, just not that particular field. So it's just, I think in this case, and I know it's not popular what I'm going to be saying because I don't live there, but I say I've had family who live there, but this is time. This is one that we need to consider and move on. We've got the M61 motorway. We've got, you know, Botany Bay, a site that's going to be developed. All these things. Let's just be in keeping with developing Chorley. Progress, business, commercial viability. And I think those should be the main considerations today and not, as I say, visual amenities, which to me are unheard of, and to many, many people in Chorley.
Thank you, Councillor Derbyshire. Councillor Ainsworth, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I agree with what some of Councillor Derbyshire said, actually. We want to encourage people to live in Chorley, but we also want to encourage people to bring business to Chorley, to work into Chorley, and having a site like this will bring that business into Chorley and will encourage local people to stay in Chorley and work. So on that basis, I'm happy to support officer's recommendations about granting this application.
Thank you, Councillor Ainsworth. Councillor Southern, over to you.
Well, thank you, Chair. Well, I'm torn, depending which hat I've got on. So I've been to the site, I've looked around it, and I get it. I see exactly where the residents are coming from with this, and it's a difficult one. As has already been stated, it is designated land for industrial use, and I think there's a degree of mitigation there that definitely needs to be looked at. If I put my other hat on, in terms of commercial aspect to it, it's ideally situated. It is atypical of an industrial estate you'll see on many motorways up and down the country. It's the sort of thing we're used to seeing, and in terms of what it brings to Chorley, I completely concur with Councillor Derbyshire. It's been mentioned that it's dense as a development. At the end of the day, the demand for this particular type of unit is in demand, and I know this for a simple reason that commercial properties is an aspect in which I'm involved. So I do get it, and I see both sides of the argument, and I think it needs to be done properly. It needs to have conditions applied to it, and that we need to have a degree of control of it. What I wouldn't like to see is the fact that we say no to this, it slips away, and we lose all control of it. I wouldn't like to see that. So if it's going to happen, I would like us to have a say as how it's done so that it benefits everybody, both from a commercial aspect and indeed the residents that are overlooking it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Southern. Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I don't think there's any argument as that this is a requirement that's needed in Chorley in terms of commercial development. The argument I'd like the committee to look at is whether they think it's the right development. The supporter there talked about strawberry fields and so forth. I think if the development looked as good as strawberry fields, there would be less of an argument, because I think that is a far more a better development. But I want the committee to think of what has been said by the objectors, etc. Look at the density, and I hear what Adela said. Look at the layout, the height, the massing of the design and so forth, and decide, is it as good as it could be? I mean, in terms of landscaping, I was looking at one or two things. I mean, basically, they've landscaped the bits of land that were left over after they did the development. I believe there's a technical term for it, land after development, something like that. And that's the impression I get. They didn't go to look at the engineers didn't look at that development and then say, yeah, right, okay, we've done that, we've fitted in the correct requirements. Let's hand that over to a landscape architect and see if they can improve it and make it look good. Talk about beauty and so forth. Sadly, that's not in any statute just yet. It will come along, but it would be good if it looked good, better than it is, and that's really what I'd like the committee to sort of talk about. I mean, the site isn't well, it's not of any landscape value. It says it's low landscape value. I think the people who regularly use the public right of way up and down there would disagree with that. They're familiar with the area, and I think they think that makes a positive contribution to the landscape of the area. So as I say, I'm not against development. We need that development. It's the perfect site for it, but it could be a lot better in terms of its density, the landscaping, the mitigation, really, that needs to be put in place. So I'd like to hear from the committee on those points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morwood. Councillor Snow.
I agree with a lot of what has been said by all parties here. This is not a particularly good application. I don't think it's great, but we have to deal with what's in front of us and deal with it within the context of our planning policies. I think the landscaping is poor. I think some of the arrangements are not great. One comment that was made in the addendum that there was concern raised about the structural integrity of the site and the need for appropriate geotechnical investigations to be undertaken. And in the amendment, it says there's going to be there was a preliminary risk assessment prepared by Tincklers, and the EHO have looked at it, and they want phase 2 intrusive site investigation with ground gas monitoring. The nature of the thing that concerned me, that was put to me by one resident, was that there was a significant landslip on the site. What's going to be investigated here? We will not do anything to look at that. Now, if I'm not a geotechnical engineer. I did work for a civil engineering company, but I'm no expert. But if this is an issue of the ground stability there will be a lot of work to undertake to stabilise this ground. Nothing to do with remediation. It will be proper civil engineering works to re-engineer the site. And I don't think we can proceed without that information. I think it would, if we did proceed, there'd be a need to reconfigure the construction plan considerably. How are you going to? You might require a vast amount of earth to be removed or remodeled, and we need to know before we can, I think, approve this planning application.
Thank you, Councillor Snow. I'm just going to bring officers back in to address some of those concerns that we've got.
Thanks, Chair. So, phase 1 preliminary risk assessment was submitted with the application, and it did identify that the land on which the site is located has undergone some landslip in the past, which isn't unusual for land that's on a slope. The topsoil does tend to move, so that's to be expected. What it does identify is a need to carry out further survey work. At this stage, where planning permission hasn't been granted yet, obviously, with the developer, they may not want to go to the full expense of carrying out that full survey work of the site, and they may want to wait until they've got planning permission before they address those more specific issues of what structural details will be required to to support a development of this type. Clearly, a large amount of structural engineering would need to be delivered on this site to create those platforms and to support those buildings that they're proposing, you know, big buildings on development platforms. It's entirely reasonable to expect that there will be an engineering solution to that issue. Developments take place on sites like this up and down the country. We would expect to receive a phase 2 investigation report, and we've conditioned, we've recommended that a condition be included to require those further investigations and the details of how those substructures will be delivered and implemented in relation to the retaining walls, the foundations of the buildings. So those details can be confirmed further down the line if planning permission was granted, and they would be required under conditions 5 and 6 set out in the addendum as advised by the council's environmental health officer. So I think the council can be confident that the land is capable of being developed. It was allocated for development, so some investigation has gone into consideration as to whether this land is capable of development, or else it shouldn't have found its way into the development plan, quite frankly. And we've also had a previous application approved for housing without that level of detail as well. So I think the members can be confident that a decision could be made on the basis of the information that we've got to date, subject to receiving further information in relation to further geotechnical investigations and details around substructures and retaining structures on the site. Thanks, Chair.
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Snow?
Yeah, well, I would. Yeah, of course, developers don't want to do more work than required to submit their planning application. But I do think here, I mean, I just don't understand all I've seen is the area of the landslide, which has been quite significant area. You know, just in my mind, I think it's going to require a substantial amount of work to remodel the contour of the sites in the best way to accommodate that. And you know, I do think we should have asked for that. You know, the bit about gas monitoring, I'm not interested. You know, that would happen anyway. You know, it would be very foolish of anybody not to do that.
Okay, I'm going to just bring officers back before I move on to, I think Councillor France wanted to speak.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's important to differentiate between landslip and landslide in terms of the geological processes that have taken place on this site. Obviously, a landslide is a catastrophic event which could potentially, it would preclude the site from having been allocated in the first instance, and it would probably make it unviable to develop. Landslip's entirely different. This is where we're talking about the surface material moving because it's on a slope, which is perfectly normal for a sloping site, and that's the issue that would be addressed through the further detail, and that's a perfectly normal way of dealing with a development, asking for further geotechnical details at the next stage if they get to the next stage. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to move on from that point. So, Councillor France, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. There would be no access to the site even under construction from Blackburn Road. Can you just confirm that, Ian?
Through you, Chair. So there's conditions in the report, on the addendum, sorry, that set out that access to the site from the A674, the details of that access must be provided prior to any commencement of development, and that access must be constructed up to base course level before any commencement of the development, so that therefore the development would then be accessed from the A674. It's not anticipated that the site will be accessed from Blackburn Road, and those conditions should ensure that happens, that access takes place from the A674 Millennium Way. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. On another point, just coming back to what Councillor Morwood said, if you look at B&E 1A, the proposal does not have a significant detrimental impact on the surrounding area by virtue of its intensity and setting layout, buildings, plots and ratio height. I think that's open to interpretation. There is an argument that it does. There is an argument that it doesn't. It depends how you interpret that. Yeah, that would be my comment on that one. It's just that there is an interpretation there of being A1. There's a little bit of leeway as to which way you would interpret it. It does look a bit of a dense site to me, like Councillor Morwood has said, but I'll leave it at that at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morwood, back to you.
Dense, but except not overdeveloped, as explained. There are a lot of conditions. I'm just asking for a couple of clarifications because there's been a lot and I haven't read them all. They came in later. So first of all, in terms of the operation of this site, is it anticipated that it will be 24/7? And if it is, working through the night, are there conditions in terms of noise levels or times and so forth? And on top of that, a second one, while you're thinking about that one, is in terms of lighting. Because it's operating 24/7, they've not been very good at having the best lighting on the other side, and some of these searchlights that they seem to use seem to be pointing in rather strange directions. So is there anything about the lighting that's going to be on this site during the night?
Just before we go there, Councillor Morwood, I'm conscious that the addendum did come in quite late. Do you require an adjournment to read?
No,
to read.
I'm just making a point. There were a lot, and I don't know.
Yeah.
There was so many that it was inevitable that we were coming later, not late, later. And so I'm just, as I haven't read them all, I'm sure the officers can get to the points quicker than I can.
Okay.
So it's is there anything about the lighting? Particularly, I noticed the canal trusts were very concerned about lighting along the canal and so forth. So in terms of lighting along the canal, lights that may shine into Great Norley, etc., is there anything in the conditions?
Through you, Chair. Yes, there is a condition requiring a lighting scheme at condition 13. So we don't have those details yet, which is why there's a condition recommended that a lighting scheme is provided. That would then give the council the opportunity to look at how appropriate that lighting scheme would be in relation to its effects on nearby residential occupiers, biodiversity as well. It would be looked at by the council's environmental health officer, probably also the council's ecology advisors as well. So there is a condition in relation to the external lighting of the site. There's also conditions in relation to hours of operation. So condition 44 sets out that the units shall only operate between the hours of 7 in the morning and 9 in the evening. Condition 45 also sets out hours in relation to deliveries and waste collections, and that would be 7:30 in the morning until 8 o'clock in the evening, Monday to Friday, 9 in the morning till 1 o'clock on Saturdays, and at no time on Sundays and nationally recognised holidays. There's actually some further conditions that do relate to sort of noise nuisance in relation to the way that vehicles operate around the site, the types of the types of power that vehicles should use when they're stationary, electric rather than diesel or motor powered. There's also some conditions condition 46 and 47 set out the sort of level of noise, that the noise limits that could be generated within certain distances of noise sensitive receptors. So that would help to control any adverse noise impacts that might otherwise occur. So they're towards the end of the conditions. there's also a construction management plan. I mean, those conditions relate to the operation of the development once it was up and running. There's also a condition that the construction management plan that's been submitted is adhered to throughout the course of the development. They would need to provide further details in relation to lighting, the setup of lighting on site as part of that plan, so that we have the opportunity to discuss them with the environmental health officer. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and I just reiterate my poor choice of words. Not late, just I didn't get a chance to read them.
That's fine. Thank you, Councillor Moore. I'm just going to bring Adele back in briefly.
Yes, Councillor Moore, thank you for raising those issues, and I do accept your point that they did come in later than we would have liked, but obviously there's a lot to work through. I'm just mindful that the local community have been impacted by some of the lighting during construction, and obviously Ian has explained the conditions that will exist for the development once it's operational, and that's why the construction management plan will also require the details of the lighting throughout the duration of the construction, because I think that's where the most concern has come through on the adjoining site. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Whitaker, did you wish to speak?
Thanks, Chair. I have to say, I have a great deal of sympathy with some of the residents that live off Blackburn Road. We've all got the letters, and they make very good reading. What they're looking at now is an open landscape, and we saw some pictures at the beginning of the fields and so on. What I was wondering was whether the officers had got any. I was concerned about the screening to the Blackburn Road side, and on the details in the application form, there were some illustrations of what it would like after 1 year, what it would like after 5 years. Are those available?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Those details are available on the planning file, but they're not on the presentation. The images of the landscape in terms of how it would look at those different stages of growth. That's what I understand you asking about.
Yeah, on paragraph 74, it says, the overwhelming concern is how the landscape can be used to screen development effectively along Blackburn Road to the east. And it says be visited during the assessment and revised so that once the retaining wall is built to the rear of the upper terrace, the planting buffer zone with variable depths of 5 to 7 to 11 metres, as illustrated, will be created.
Yeah.
This will provide an effective planting buffer along this most sensitive boundary, which it is. And looking across the valley there to the canal and up the other side, I can understand the concerns that residents have. I have to say, and I wish it was different, but in circumstances like this, we're hardly a master in our own house, because we have to provide opportunities like this. And inevitably, there are people that lived in top of Blackburn Road have lived there. I don't know, those houses were built in the 70s or 80s or something like that. And I understand how they'd be reluctant to lose that and have campaigned very effectively. And Councillor Lowe was very articulate about that. So I'm torn at the moment, Chair, without making the things about that. But I'll wait and see how things go.
Councillor Southern, did you like to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to briefly reiterate the point I made earlier about the importance of us as a planning committee and officers. It's important that we have oversight over this. And I would hate to see a scenario where that's taken away from us. I think it's not disputed by anybody that this is designated land for development. I think it's just important to bear in mind, and I say this to my colleagues, far better to have control over this so it's done properly and that we can mitigate it and that we can decide how it's gone than it gets taken away from our hands. And that's just the point I want to make, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Southern. So looking at how the debate's gone so far. Councillor Ainsworth has made a proposal for officer recommendations. I haven't had a seconder and I haven't had any other amendments. Councillor Derbyshire. Thank you very much. Would any other member wish to comment on this application before I move to the vote? Okay, so I have had a proposer for officer recommendations from Councillor Ainsworth, which has been seconded by Councillor Derbyshire. I haven't had anything for an amendment by any member, and no one else wishes to speak, so therefore I will move to the vote. So all those in favour of officer recommendations? Councillor Lowe isn't going to vote on this, so okay, well, we'll record that as an abstention. Taz, over to you to confirm.
Thank you, Chair. So, committee have decided to grant permission for employment development comprising of a range of buildings in use, classes E.g. B2 and B8, including new access of A674, internal circulation, parking, servicing, landscaping and ancillary matters at the land to the west side of Blackburn Road, Chorley. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Taz. So just for the members of the public that have come this evening, that means that the planning application has been approved. I'm going to take a short adjournment now whilst we just move the next speakers in and bring Councillor Lowe back in. Thank you. Right, welcome back everybody. Thank you very much. I'm just conscious we've got new people in the room, so I'm just going to go through a few sort of housekeeping rules. So planning applications to be determined. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for the planning application are as follows. The officers will summarise the report. Registered speakers will then be invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor and the applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against the application, as chair, I will consider granting the applicant or their representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to remain quiet throughout the proceedings. If any member wishes to make a proposal for office recommendations or an amendment, please make it clear that you are doing so. So we are on to item 3B, land at Tincklers Lane, Eccleston. There is an update on the addendum. Adele will present the item. Officer recommendation remains that outline planning permission is granted subject to conditions in a section 106 legal agreement to secure the following. 35% of the dwellings are to be affordable, with 70% of those to be socially rented and 30% for shared ownership. £32,340 for public open space contributions, £49,506 for 2 additional secondary school places. I have 2 registered speakers. I have an objector, Dr. Anne Hanson. Thank you. And I've got the agent, Dan Hughes. Lovely, both here, that's great. So officers, over to you to present the report. It's Adele. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application site forms part of a wider parcel of land that is designated as safeguarded land under the provisions of the Chorley Local Plan Policy BNE3. The site is located to the west of the settlement boundary of Eccleston, which is a rural local service centre as defined by Policy 1 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy. The site is comprised of agricultural land covering an area of approximately 0.8 hectares with a small wooden building in its southwestern corner. It is surrounded by existing dwellings to the east and north, open fields to the south and Tincklers Lane to the west, beyond which are further dwellings and agricultural land. Much of the land to the south of the application site, also forming part of the safeguarded land designation, has recently been granted reserve matters consent for the erection of 65 dwellings. The application seeks outline planning permission for the erection of up to 15 dwelling houses, including the provision of a new access from Tincklers Lane, with all other matters reserved for subsequent approval. An outline planning application for the development for up to 15 dwellings on the application site was refused in April 2021. The applicant has sought through the submission of this application to overcome those reasons for refusal, as set out in full in the main report. The access-related reason for refusal has been overcome by proposing to relocate a hedgerow back from the highway to achieve the required visibility displays. Representations have been received from 15 addresses in objection to the proposal, including from Croston Parish Council, citing issues including residential amenity, highways and access, flood risk, water pollution and harm to ecological receptors. One neutral representation has also been received, and Eccleston Parish Council have also responded in objection to the proposal. Further details of all the representations are provided within the committee report. There are no outstanding objections from any of the technical consultees. A suite of highway-related mitigation measures has been agreed for the proposal to include new footways, street lighting and slow markings along Tincklers Lane. An education contribution has also been requested by Lancashire County Council, and a contribution towards public open space is also required. It is noted that drainage is a key issue that has been raised by objectors to the proposal. The proposed drainage solution is to connect to an existing watercourse along the southern site boundary, with surface water having been first attenuated to a greenfield rate. This approach has been agreed with the lead local flood authority, who have recommended conditions requiring technical details to be submitted for agreement prior to any development taking place. United Utilities are obliged to accept new foul drainage connections to the sewer network, and I have to ensure that there is sufficient capacity in the system. However, the Council cannot instruct or require United Utilities to undertake upgrade works, and they have raised no objection to this proposal. As this is an outline application with all matters reserved other than access, the layout, landscaping, scale and appearance of the site are not yet known, and so related impacts from these aspects will have to be assessed as part of any future application for reserved matters consent. That said, it is considered that the changes to the site frontage on Tincklers Lane would cause some harm to the character and appearance of the immediate area. Members will be well aware of the Council's housing land shortfall and the fact that the tilted balance of paragraph 11D of the framework must be applied to the Council's determination of this application. Core Strategy Policy 1 sets out the locations for growth and investment across central Lancashire and identifies Eccleston as a rural local service centre where limited growth and investment will be encouraged to help meet housing and employment needs and to support the provisions of services to the wider area. Located on the edge of the settlement, the site is in an accessible and sustainable location within a reasonable walking distance of bus stops, community facilities and shops that would provide for the day-to-day needs of residents. The proposed development is therefore considered to be consistent with Policy 1 of the core strategy. That said, whilst Policy 1 is not out of date, it does form part of a strategy which is failing to deliver a sufficient level of housing. As such, the policy should only be afforded moderate weight in the planning balance. The application site is located within land designated as safeguarded land, and Policy BNE3 is a restraint policy and states that development other than that permissible in the Greenbelt or area of other open countryside will not be permitted on safeguarded land. The proposal is therefore contrary to Policy BNE3. This policy is, however, out of date and can only be afforded limited weight in the planning balance. In terms of the benefits, the provision of new housing would bring construction and supply chain jobs, places for the economically active to live, increased local spend and greater choice in the local market. These benefits have not been quantified and would apply to any housing development of this scale, but are still considerable. The scheme would deliver a policy-compliant level of affordable housing to the area of which there is a significant shortfall across the borough. The proposal would boost the supply of housing in a situation where there is no 5-year housing supply and an under-provision of affordable housing, and as a result, moderate weight can be given to the economic and significant weight to the social benefits of the proposal would deliver. It is considered that the adverse impacts of the proposed development relating to its conflict with Policy BNE3 and the low level of harm associated with the character and appearance of Tincklers Lane would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the moderate economic and significant social benefits the proposal would deliver. As such, the proposal is recommended for approval subject to conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement as set out in the main report. It is worth giving particular attention to conditions 25 and 26 that are recommended, which have been attached due to the concerns expressed by local residents and members in relation to the capacity of the local sewer network. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adele. So, Dr. Hanson, it's over to you now. Just press the button until it goes red.
Thank you, Chair. When I look out of my window in Tincklers Lane, where I have lived for some 60 years, without looking at a clock, I can actually tell you what's going on, because it's something that just has developed over the years, and particularly alongside with the developments on Tincklers Lane itself. The first traffic that go down are the tractors. It was a country lane. They go just faster now, probably, than they did, but that's because there's been no looking at the speed limits or whatever at all on Tincklers Lane. We've had developments that have taken in things like, particularly with the houses where other houses are on the lane, and the traffic reflects this. There is very fast-moving traffic as things are delivered up and down the lane and around about it, with the shops and so on. There are also changes within the population on Tincklers Lane, and certainly there are some big growth in the number of children, and children that are walk to school by themselves. There is no pavement on the length, most of the length of Tincklers Lane, And this is indeed very dangerous. And as I look out of my window, I am very, very frightened. The traffic then builds up into queuing traffic as to get out of Tincklers Lane and into Towngate. People coming in to Tincklers Lane just miss that as they come by very fast. And again, children I see have to jump out of the way to get rid of this incoming traffic. These are the things that I can see from my windows. And now I am hearing that there's going to be even more building down Tincklers Lane without any changes to support anything, any developments, which is what has happened before. Yesterday, though, wow, there was a difference. Something happened. There was a great big makeover to the site that we are here looking at this evening. The hedges were cut, the grass was cut, the stables were moved, and all this looked very odd to me as I thought we were going to be sitting here this evening looking at planting concrete, not at anything else on a site like this. As I looked down at Tincklers Lane and this green field, I remembered a day in June, an evening in June, and late into the night in June, where water flooded off this site. Oh, sorry, I should have been doing it, but I think you could hear my voice, can you?
You can just wind up your last point, it's fine.
Yes, water flooded off this site, but not only water, sewage. The drains were being forced open, and out of them were coming all the things that you would normally find down a toilet system. Awful. One of the houses, number 6, was flooded above.
We're out of time. We need to stop now. We're out of time. You're out of time. We do need to stop now. It's all right. Don't worry. Thank you. No, we are stopping now. Okay. I'm afraid. Right. So, yeah, Mr. Hughes, it's over to you, sir. Thank you.
Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. PWA, the agent for this application, and wanted to take the opportunity to highlight some points in support of the proposal. In this respect, the site is surrounded by existing or committed development, including the larger Red Rose site to the south, which was approved on appeal. The site is on the edge of the village in a highly accessible location with walking distance of local services, including bus stops, shops, and community facilities. The site has also been put forward as a housing allocation by the council in the emerging local plan. The committee report details the numerous recent appeal approvals on safeguarded sites and in other parts of the borough, along with the council's housing land supply situation. Members will be familiar with these and their implications, so without wishing to repeat them, I would reiterate that in the absence of a 5-year supply and in the context of what one inspector described as a critical housing need, the scheme should be approved unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. There are no objections from any statutory consultees. This includes the Highways Authority. Additionally, the Flood Authority and United Utilities have said there are no issues with regards to flooding and drainage. A further review by an independent transport consultant and drainage consultant commissioned and paid for by the council agreed with these findings, subject to ensuring there was capacity for foul drainage from the site. Whilst it is the case that UU are obliged to take foul flows, they can only do so if there is capacity. The conditions suggested will ensure that there will be capacity available to take the foul water. There are therefore no grounds whatsoever for refusal on this basis. The officer's report states that some low-level harm was identified at the character of Tincklers Lane due to the loss of a section of hedgerow. Weighed against this low-level harm are the benefits of the scheme. The site would provide a valuable boost to the supply of housing, which has afforded significant weight in the planning balance. 5 affordable homes would also be provided as part of the development, helping to support local people who need this provision. There would also be related economic and social benefits during the construction phase. The applicant agrees with the officer's conclusions that the conflict with the safeguarded land policy, which itself is out of date, and the low-level harm resulting from a section of hedgerow removal will not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the proposal. I will again reiterate there are no grounds for refusal on foul water disposal, and that the condition suggested to ensure that capacity exists on the sewage network to accommodate this development. I would therefore urge you to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for making your representations. So members, I'd like to open the floor to the debate. It's over to you, Councillor Whitaker.
Thanks, Chair. As was said in the by the officer, Eccleston was a rural local service centre. Like many in the borough, were developed in the 70s for development and so on. Tincklers Lane, as the member of the public said, is an unpaved road for much of its time, and this site is adjacent to a large red row site for 60-odd, 70-odd houses just at the other side on Doctors Lane, those that don't know Eccleston. I can't really come across, given the stuff that's in the report, where it talks about safeguarded land being used, as was happened in Coppell, in Adlington, in Wealton, all over the place, in Exton, all over the place. And we know that if this was knocked back, that it would go to appeal, and the inspector would just look at that 5-year supply and would approve it. The one thing that's good about this report, which I entirely endorse, are the conditions that Adele alluded to and the developer alluded to, because the big issue down here, all the surface water, all the foul comes down from Coppell, Chorley, through Eccleston, off to the Croston sewage works. That's why Croston Parish Council objected. It all comes down there. And United Utilities, as we know, are not allowed to object, right? They're not allowed under there, they have to do it. So they just agree to everything. But at least now we've got a condition in here, 2 conditions. I think condition 13 talks about surface water attenuation, which is excellent, and that's got to be submitted and approved by the Borough Council. And the other one, conditions 25 and 26, talks about the capacity of the sewage, not just on this site, but in the surrounding area, on the Red Row site, on Doctors Lane, and as the member of the public said, and I witnessed it also, raw sewage coming down the street, getting into somebody's house on Tincklers Lane, is not something that we want to see again. So it says, paragraph 25, a review of the capability of the local sewage network in coping with the additional load from the approved dwellings, identification of any capacity upgrade works required to manage an increase in load, a timetable and methodology, and this has got to be approved in writing by the local planning authority before things commence. So with that condition, Chair, I somewhat reluctantly, I have to agree, I've opposed some of these developments in Eccleston. I not prejudge this one, but I have to go along with it. But as one person pointed out to me this week, I'd like the officers that this is just an outline application, but it backs on to development of bungalows on the Hawthorns, and I'd like some concern to be given when the officers are looking at the detail of that to see whether these will dominate the rear elevation of those things in terms of habitable rooms, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Whitaker. Would any other member like to make a comment? Councillor Morwood and then Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. Living in Moseley, I know this road like the back of my hand. The speed of tractors is unbelievable, but I won't go there. And yes, they were cutting the hedge yesterday because they nearly ran into the tractor that was doing it because he was on the bend, but there was no signs out to warn him. I'm astounded. Well, I don't know why I'm astounded because highways seem to just ignore everything. I cannot believe that anybody from county highways has been down that road. There is no pavements. As I say, there's a danger when they're hedge trimming, clearing the ditches and so forth, that you run right into the back of a tractor, unless they do proper signage and so on, but that doesn't always happen. there are no pavements. Pedestrians take their life in their hands when they walk the dog down there. They don't know whether to face the traffic or go away from the traffic. It doesn't matter. You get onto that bend that's near coming into Eccleston, and you come around the bend, and somebody could be standing there with a dog, and it's a split second. I've done it. I slammed the brakes on because it's a ridiculously dangerous road. So I'm not against. We're hamstrung because of the housing supply, but I cannot believe that highways think that that road is not dangerous. It is ridiculously dangerous for pedestrians and car drivers, even though it is 30 as you get towards Eccleston, but not everybody adheres to those. So sadly, yeah, we'll probably have to approve this, but I do hope that highways maybe, or we can put pressure on them, and they can, someone who goes and looks at it and really takes it seriously, and absolutely that you should look at their system and ensure that the capacity is there. Just because you're allowed to do it doesn't mean to say they just have to accept it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Southern.
Oh, thank you, Chair. First off, I'm not buying that there's not a problem with the sewerage down there. There is. And I've had to drive through it before now, so in common with Councillor Morwood, I drive that particular strip of road regular, and I nearly took the track the other day as well. There was nothing out. Councillor Morwood's actually stole me thunder in which that I was going to make the very same point about this. And I'm pleased that we have got conditions in. That's the main thing. We've got conditions in there and we can manage the site. The B&E3 thing was the first thing I looked at. And if you read the report going through there, and every turn, it recommends no, no, no. But B&E3 doesn't carry the way it used to do. And were this to go to appeal, it would simply be looked at and say, no, that's development, you can develop that. And this comes back to the fact that we're still working to the old local plan. However, we are with it. The development itself, I don't have a particular issue with. The footpath arrangement does bother me, and in common with Councillor Morwood, I think we should be at least speaking to them, particularly about putting some slow markings on the road there, because those two bends in particular, they do come hooking round there. I know it because they've passed me. I've nearly been clipped umpteen times, and I travel that road umpteen times a day. So I think we do need to be having a word with highways about that, LCC, and that hopefully that if we're managing the site there, we can. It's the sort of thing that we can mitigate. In terms of the UU scenario, again, they aren't obliged to go and check it, but I'll tell you now, there will be tears before bedtime. Well, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, because all the water does come down there. And as Councillor Whittaker pointed out, this is the reason the Crossing objected, because that's the way it goes. It runs all the way down from Carrington Centre, it comes all the way down there, and that's the part it hits. So, whilst I'm minded to agree to this, it is with reservation, Chair, and I think it's certainly one to watch, and that we need to be holding the feet to the fire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Southern. I'm just going to bring officers back.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to give some comfort to members that the scheme does include the provision of the introduction of footways from the site access to improve pedestrian safety.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Chair. I'm glad to hear about the footpaths, and also I concur about the conditions on the drainage as well. But both Eccleston and Croston Parish Council both raised the same issue that Councillor Morwood and Councillor Southern and Councillor Whittaker has mentioned about flooding. And it does say about the drainage strategy is to be submitted for approval prior to the building of these houses. Is there any measures that can be put on the final application when the measures come in to make sure that they don't change the plans? Because it says at the top of page 107, it's indicated as one. That the site plans showing the permeable and impermeable areas. notoriously people come into these houses and they whack a drive on, or they whack a garage on the side. It all becomes impermeable before you know it, and that just adds to the fact that there's flooding downstream, as it were, or down the village, down the other villages, and the way that this site is designed needs to remain the way it's designed, not be changed within 6 months that the first house is occupied and the next house is occupied. So is there any opportunity to take away permitted development rights, or to improve the way that to insist that people are not turning permeable surfaces into impermeable surfaces because of the flooding down in the next two villages?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you for that. I'll respond to those 2 points in reverse order, if I may. The issue of permeability through the provision of driveways, the permitted development right allows a certain area to be paved without the need for planning permission. It's permitted development providing it is permeable and providing it does run off to a soakaway. The government makes it quite clear in terms of the extent of permitted development rights, and those permitted development rights have been significantly increased in recent years to allow people to do lots and lots of changes to their houses, even including putting new stories on their houses now. It's a vast raft of measures that the government has introduced to allow people to change their homes. Given the size of the development, given the size of the site area, it would not be reasonable to remove permitted development rights. There's even an argument to say that if you're removing permitted development rights, then your scheme is too dense. But in this case, it's not a dense development, so there's plenty of space between the buildings to allow permitted development to take place. Clearly, as part of any development to extend properties or to build garages or that kind of thing, then that would be controlled through building regulations to ensure that the surface water is adequately dealt with. I mean, ultimately, the rain that falls on that site will fall on that site regardless of whether there's a house there or there's not a house there. So it's likely that it's ultimately it will find its way into the drainage network. But no, it wouldn't be a reasonable proposition to remove permitted development rights on a development like this. It wouldn't meet the tests of the framework.
Okay, would anyone else like to comment on this application? Because I don't have any proposals at the moment, so I need someone to step up. Councillor Southern.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I propose that, as proposed, that we accept it subject to our conditions.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to? Councillor Morwood, seconded. Does any other member want to make any comment on this? I have a proposal for officer recommendations from Councillor Southern, which has been seconded by Councillor Morwood. Okay, there are no hands going up, so I am now going to move to the vote. So this is for officer recommendations. Okay, thank you, Taz. Will you just confirm the outcome of that vote, please? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to grant permission subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement, as outlined in the report, for the outline application for the erection of 15 dwellings with all matters reserved, safer access from Tincklers Lane at London Tincklers Lane, Eccleston. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. So for the members of the public that have attended this evening, that means that the planning application has been approved. If you've come just for that application, you are now free to leave. Thank you to those that have made your representations. Okay, so we're now going to move on to item 3C. So this is Chorley Rugby Union Club, Chancery Road, Astley Village. There is an update on the addendum. Ian will present the item. Office recommendation remains that outline planning permission be approved subject to conditions and section 106 agreement. I have 2 registered speakers. I've got an objector, Andrew Lego. Is that correct? Hello, lovely. And the applicant, Graham Brown. Lovely. Okay, thank you very much. So, Ian, it's over to you to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks outline planning permission for the erection of up to 16 dwellings with all matters reserved except for access, which will be taken from West Way. The application site is located on a part of the Chorley Rugby Club site, which is positioned between Chancery Road and West Way and is in the settlement area of Chorley. The site is allocated for housing and for sports and recreational facilities within the Chorley local plan. The wider site has been developed to provide upgraded rugby club facilities supported by residential development of 50 dwellings to the north of the site. The application site itself is surplus to the overall redevelopment with no specified plan for its use, whilst it was previously part of a golf driving range. Despite the allocation for housing, an assessment must be carried out in relation to policy HW2 of the local plan, which seeks to protect land for sport and recreation. It's noted that the site is unlikely to be brought forward for brought into any formal use, as it will be impractical to do so. And as such, its loss would not lead to an appreciable deficit in provision and does not satisfy a current recreational need. The site doesn't make a significant visual contribution to the character of the area, and it's considered to meet the criteria of policy HW2 for redevelopment. It must also be recognised that the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year housing supply, and therefore the tilted balance must be engaged in line with paragraph 11D of the framework. The benefits of the development are set out in the report and with associated weightings and comprise a contribution towards housing supply, the provision of affordable housing on site, and economic benefits through supporting jobs during construction. The harms arising from the proposed development relate to the loss of trees in order to create the access and the loss of land designated for sport and recreation. However, these are considered to be limited for the reasons that are set out in the report. LCC Highways have confirmed that they have no objection and of the opinion that the proposed development would not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site. Other technical matters, including ecology and drainage, are considered to be acceptable in accordance with the policies of the development plan, subject to appropriate mitigation. Overall, the proposed development is considered to be acceptable in principle, and it's recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out on the addendum and Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. So, Andrew, it's over to you. So we just press the button on the microphone until it goes red.
Thank you, Chair. I've been asked to represent 2 people today. Mr. Steve Hodgson, who's a resident of Chancery Fields, number 49, and I'll say what he wanted to say first. Our main concern is the footpath access to the new proposed site. The report fails to recognise our concerns regarding the route of the path adjacent to the rear of our property, number 49 and number 50. It would appear that the footpath has now been upgraded to a cycle path with certain restrictions, but still following the original path. The proposal is that this cycle path will be lit, which raises concerns over light pollution on our property, and be a security private gated pathway only accessible for residents of the proposed development. However, there also seems to be a provision to actually remove this specification should the developer feel the need, and as in paragraph 67, this is totally unsatisfactory. It is my belief that pedestrian access should be either from West Way by creating a footpath from the Eccleston Lane Chancery Road roundabout. This would give pedestrian access to the Sports Hub, Washington Lane and the proposed development, or via the southern boundary of the Brookfield site. That is from Mr. Steve Hodgson. I now would like to make a representation on behalf of Chorley Rugby Union Club. The land in question is still known as Chorley Rugby Union Club, as shown on the letter received, but Chorley Rugby Union have not been notified of this request nor consulted at any time. They've been forced to relocate due to the Trust making our presence uncomfortable since the opening of the facility, restricting our use of the pitches and the facilities primarily, but there are other reasons as well. The space that is being allocated could be better utilised as a training area or a small pitch, and this space would be best used as space for junior rugby or football players to help club development. However, the Trust have not allowed the junior football players to use the facility this year, and if the space is sold, then that option becomes a complete non-starter for both sports. Recent history shows that the Trust has scant regard for planning regulations as the scrap vehicles and outdoor fitness infrastructure bears out. They also have a poor record of managing monies in regard to development. The original sums of money have been lost in the original build and no meaningful accounts have been submitted. The Rugby Football Union have opposed the application, so have Sport England and I believe the Football Association. And Chorley Rugby Union Club have the full backing of Lancashire Rugby Football Union to oppose the sale of this land. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. So, Mr. Brown, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for your time tonight. Good evening, my name is Graham Brown. I am Chairman of Chorley Community Trust, a registered charity based at Brookfields Park in Chorley. I would like to thank on behalf of the Trust, the Chair and officers for the reports and the time and effort that has gone into the planning considerations for our site. I would like to firstly highlight that the land in discussion is unused and is not required by the Trust. However, further works to our facility are vital to maximise the potential of the existing site and progress with the initiatives that we are determined to deliver for the wider area of Chorley. Once funds from the development are obtained, the Trust will complete works which will allow them to self-fund for future years, securing the future of the Trust and all the benefits to the community that this will bring. The facility of Brookfields Park is unique in the fact there is no other multi-sports facility of its type in Chorley or the surrounding areas. The Trust seeks to develop the site further to expand the current sporting offer to other sports that are lacking in opportunities. One of our main aims is to bring the people of Chorley and those from outside of the borough together to enjoy sports, recreational activities in a safe and friendly environment. An event for over 1,000 children was held in July. With additional funding of the land, we wish to expand events to other sports to put Brookfields Park on the map as a location providing exemplary facilities that's already in place. The benefits of such events to the young people taking part extend beyond just physical and mental well-being. The wider community comes together socially to share their experiences in a positive, well-run environment. This is at the core of our values and what we want to promote as a charity. Our reach is just not outdoor sports. We have held, until recently, been the venue for the Parkinson's Disease Support Group, which was held to allow people affected by the disease to come and share time and experiences in a comfortable, friendly, private environment. Again, the additional funding from the sale of the land will enable us to improve the facility to open the doors more to groups of this nature. Before 2021, our facility was not functional for recreational purposes for approximately 6 years, and its last sporting use was part of an extended golf driving range, and there is no extant planning consent in place for the use of this proposed development land. The positive impact of the sale of this land on the Trust cannot be underestimated. Whilst providing new opportunities in coming years, we also need to maintain what we have. Comments have been noted that the site could be in greater general condition, and receiving the funds from the sale of this land will also go a long way for us to address this. In summary, I'd like to thank you for listening to my statement, and my final words will be that Brookfields Park has the potential to be one of the best facilities in the area of Chorley and beyond. These funds will give us the ability to enhance that further by generating revenue streams to secure our long-term future, maximising the potential of our facility, putting the town of Chorley on the map, supporting recreational, sporting and charitable activities for people of all ages. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you very much. Members, I'll open the floor to you, Councillor Platt.
Chair, I would just like to declare a personal interest in this. I work for one of the parish councils who has objected to it. It's not me that's objected, it's the parish council. but obviously I have to type the letter, and my name's on the bottom of it. But that's obviously just my work. So I just wanted you to know that. I have taken legal advice on this, and I can stay and I can speak and I can vote. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I'll just get Taz, the legal officer, to confirm that. but I
Through
think
you,
we're-
Chair, yes, Councillor Platt did mention this to me, and given that she wasn't part of the decision-making process, she can remain in the room and vote.
Lovely. Members, over to you. Councillor Platt.
Thanks. I'm a bit surprised, rather very surprised actually, about the entrance off Westway. I don't know, I wasn't around when the decision was made about the Westway playing fields, but obviously many of you will have done. And the extent that Lancashire County Council required you to alter the road, to widen the road, to light the road, to put central reservation items on the road. This is a 40-mile-an-hour clear way. It's not suitable for people to be walking up and down, and this is the main entrance to a residential area. There will be children going to primary schools, there will be children going to colleges, there will be children trying to look for buses, and there is no pavement. It's not very wide entrance, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted that Lancashire County Council hasn't put a lot more effort into creating the entrance here or even moving it from here. It's dangerous. Like I say, it's a 40-mile-an-hour clearway, and it shouldn't have people walking up and down. And I'll speak again in a minute, but I have to remember my point. Thank you.
Just going to bring Ian back on that one.
Thank you, Chair. The access to Westway is planned as a purely vehicular access, whilst the pedestrian and cycle access would be to Chancery Road, out via Chancery Fields. It's shown on the site plan on the presentation, and I understand that access will be a gated access rather than a public one. Thanks, Chair.
So we'll just come back on that. There are 6 primary school sites in Eccleston. Oh, and my other point I just remembered, this is in Eccleston. This is not in Astley Village. It's been misdesignated. It's this side of the river. It's in Eccleston. There are 6 primary school sites in Eccleston, and these children could be going to any one of them, and not one of them lead off Chancery. They will be using this to walk down. The closest I would probably think is Balshall Lane Primary School. And these children will be coming off their site, off a residential site, and walking down a 40-mile-an-hour clearway with no pavements, just grass. So I just would like to throw it back to Lancashire County Council on those points, really. Doesn't matter how many times you say, oh, you should be going that way. Children and parents will be going the way that's the quickest and the easiest for them. And I think we'll be encouraging people to be walking down there. And without suitable pavements, I think it's a disaster waiting to happen. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Would any of the member like to make a comment? Councillor Southern.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Concur with my colleague, Councillor Platt, vis-a-vis the entrance, and I'm surprised as well that that Lancashire I appreciate the fact that it's for bigger access, but as Councillor Platt's already pointed out, kids will go the quickest way they can see, and I'm not particularly happy about kids walking down there. I'm also a bit torn between the 2 recommendations. So we've got Rugby England, if I'm mistaken. Another sporting body is saying that they don't want to see it developed. Yet we've got the Brookfield Park just saying that they do. And when a sporting authority says they don't want to see a piece of playing field developed, that worries me. So I have got reservations with this. Yeah, but I think for me it's just access onto Westway, and I fully appreciate what Ian's saying about the pedestrian access going through on at Chancery that way there. In reality, I'm not actually seeing them using that, to be honest with you. That's my point. Thank you.
Okay, members, would someone else like to comment here, please? Councillor Whitaker, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand what the local representatives were they saying about, were they saying this should be refused? I don't know the site as well as they do, obviously, but I wonder if it's, I know whether other members know the site as well as they do. I wonder whether it was a sort of thing that we could defer to get Lancashire County Council to make some comments about highway safety and access to schools that Councillor Platt has alluded to, and see what there are. Certainly the main road going through that road, where it's a grass verge, virtually. I would have some concerns about that, Chair. And I don't know what the local representative thinks, but perhaps a deferral so we can have a site visit and then come back. Have we got time to do that?
I'm just going to bring Adele back in to answer some of those points.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Essentially, Lancashire County Council have made their statutory comments. It's unlikely that they would provide any additional comments, you know, any time soon. They've been consulted. They've had the opportunity to comment. As Ian said, there is the access onto Westway is a vehicular access with other provision available for pedestrians and cycle users. If the information available on the site plans clearly shows that we accept there are no pavements on Westway, so I'm not sure what would be benefited from going to see that. It is a matter of fact that no pavements exist. But if members want to go and visit it, then you know that's a matter for them. In terms of the comments from Sport England have made a representation on the basis that it's a loss of a playing field, but you can see from the photographs that it's not a playing field. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Whitaker, did you want to come back?
Just, obviously, I don't know the site as well as other people do. And it was commented earlier that some of the comments that come from Lancashire at the moment, and I'm a member of Lancashire, almost defy description. So I don't know that, but I don't know what Councillor Mrs. Platt would say about having a site visit. I mean, I'll go along with what I listened to what Adele says. Did you say the houses that are built here, the children will have a pedestrian access to get somewhere, will they? Can't assume they're all going in a car.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, the pedestrian access it's purely a pedestrian and cycle access between the application site and Chancery Fields is what is proposed, and the access, vehicular access to the site, is from Westway at the other end, and it's simply a vehicular access rather than a pedestrian one.
It's not a paved access for the kids.
That's not the intention of the proposed access. No. It's notable that the Chancery Fields development immediately adjacent to it to the north, the access, vehicular and pedestrian for that site is via Chancery Fields onto Chancery Road. There isn't an access onto Westway from that part of the site. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe, you indicated to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As a representative for the neighbouring patch, even though this is technically in Eccleston, it borders on the Westway bit in terms of the approach to Westway Sports Hub, falls within mine and Councillor Morwood's patch. It is regrettable in terms of the loss of the playing fields, etc. And I share the concerns, particularly over the stretch at the end of Washington Lane along Westway. But I note the comments at paragraph 10 of the report from our friends at Lancashire County Council Highways, that I believe that the pedestrian access, etc., will be the subject of a reserved matters application where we can talk about details over the pathway. But I see no planning reason to object to this, and so with that, Chair, I'll move the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Any other member wish to speak on this? I've got Councillor Whittaker's proposed deferral for a site visit. Councillor Lowe has proposed office recommendations. Neither of those have been seconded. So, Councillor Platt.
I don't know the technicalities of how I would oppose this, but I would like to object to this application on the grounds of safety, because I don't believe that Lancashire County Council has considered the amount of people who will be coming out on Westway by foot. I really don't think that they have seen what this application implies. Nothing else has been allowed to exit onto Westway. No extensions onto Astley Village, nothing from the fire centre, nothing from, in fact, it's clearway, it's a clearway, it's 40 miles an hour. The application for the Westway Sports Hub had to do lengthy and very, very expensive roadworks and changes to be able to exit onto Westway because of the type of road this is. I do believe that Lancashire County Council have not considered this properly, and I would like to move to refuse this application on those grounds.
I just need you to clarify the exact reason for refusal. I'm happy to accept the proposal for the amendment. Do you want a short adjournment to consider that?
If safety reasons are summed up in a particular policy, because I'm quite new on the committee, I don't know which policy to quote, to be quite honest.
Do you want a short adjournment just to think about this? Yeah, okay. I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes. All right, thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for that. So, Councillor Platt, did you want to make a further proposal? Thank you. Over
Yeah,
to you.
can I make an amendment to Councillor Whittaker's proposal for a site visit, that we go back to Lancashire County Council and ask them for a definitive answer of whether they've considered the amount of pedestrians that are going to be using this exit onto Westway, even though they know that there's a pedestrian provision provided. It will increase pedestrian traffic, and it's a dangerous road, and it's 40 miles an hour, and there are no pavements whatsoever. Yeah, and I put that proposal,
Okay,
please.
so so that's fine. So if you're going, are you just to clarify, you're going to second the site visit as long as Councillor Whittaker agrees with that amendment? Is that correct?
The addition, yeah, the addition to his.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Whittaker? Are you happy to agree Councillor Platt's amendment to the site visit? Yeah.
All the sites, so
yeah,
it seems a chance to do the things.
Okay. So right, so that's fine. Okay, Councillor Southern. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Could I second that proposition by Councillor Whitley has been amended by Councillor Platt, please?
You certainly can. Okay, any other member like to make any comment on this? Okay, so I've got a proposal for officer recommendations that hasn't been seconded. I've got a proposer for a site visit with an amendment proposed by Councillor Whittaker, seconded by Councillor Southern, with Councillor Platt's amendment. Would anybody else like to comment on this before I move to the vote? Okay, so the vote is to go for a site visit and to contact LCC for further information and clarification. So the vote is to defer for a site visit and contact LCC for further clarification. Okay, so that's what we're voting on, if that makes sense. Everyone clear on that? Okay, all right, let's take the vote, thanks. Okay, Taz, Taz, it's over to you to confirm that.
Thank you, Chair. Just waiting for Councillor Ainsworth to vote there. So, committee has decided to defer this matter to allow for a site visit and to also seek clarification from LCC in respect of the matters raised by Councillor Platt. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that for the members of the public that arrived, that might be a bit confusing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and have a look at the site, and whilst we're doing that, we're going to seek clarification from Lancashire County Council for the reason Councillor Platt has mentioned. The decision will be deferred to the next planning committee, which is the 19th of November. The 19th of December even. Yes, that's a long way, isn't it? Thank you. 19th of December. So if you've come just for that, the decision has been deferred for those reasons. Thank you. Right, okay, so item 3D, this is 81 Wood Lane, Heskin. Adele will be presenting the item. Officer recommendation is that planning permission is granted subject to conditions. Councillor Singh has, at the beginning of the meeting, declared an interest in this and will be speaking as a parish councillor as an objector. Therefore, I'll take his representations first. He will then leave the committee whilst the debate and decision is made. So, registered speakers, we've got Councillor Singh as a parish councillor, and we've got the applicant agent, Clive Morris. Clive, thank you. So, Adele, over to you to present the item. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located in the green belt on the eastern side of Wood Lane, to the southeast of its junction with Park Hall Road. It comprises a large, roughly rectangular plot of land screened on three sides by mature trees and is occupied by a vacant detached dwelling in a poor state of repair. Planning permission has previously been granted for the erection of two dwellings on land immediately to the south of the application site, which was previously occupied by a large number of outbuildings which were associated with the vacant dwelling. There are no existing dwellings in close proximity to the site, the nearest being on the opposite side of Wood Lane. The application seeks planning permission for the erection of a 3-storey office building following the demolition of the existing dwelling. The proposed building has been designed to match the recently approved dwellings to the south. Excuse me. The applicant wishes to utilise the new offices for their existing insolvency practice, currently located at Heskin Hall Farm, but having outgrown the existing building. 20 representations have been received in objection to the proposal, including from Councillor Arjun in his capacity as a parish councillor, citing issues including residential amenity, highways and access, and harm to ecological receptors. One representation has been received in support of the proposal, stating that it will take a derelict property and provide a great use of land, providing a place of work for people and extra business for local pubs and shops, and will not disturb local residents or cause noticeable increase in traffic. There are no outstanding objections from technical consultees. A full assessment of the proposal is contained in the committee report, and members will note that officers do not consider that the proposed development is inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. This is due to the proposed building meeting an exception within the framework for the redevelopment of previously developed land. There would be no unacceptable adverse impacts on the character and appearance of the existing site or surrounding area, nor would the proposed development cause any significant harm to the amenity of neighbouring residents, ecology interests, trees or highway safety. It is therefore considered that the development accords with national and local policy, and it is recommended that the application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele. Councillor Singh, it's over to you to speak in your capacity now as a parish councillor. Thanks.
Thank you for allowing me to speak about this application. So back in May 2021, planning approval was given for the erection of 2 detached dwellings for the following the demolition of the existing garages and outbuildings. These have not been built yet. So therefore this application is addition to this previous and is an application for 3-storey office building following the demolition of the existing 2-storey detached dwelling and outbuilding. On the plans, you shall see it shows 17 car park spaces, which includes 2 disabled spaces. We believe that given the current condition of Wood Lane and Park Hall Road, this is going to cause more motorised incidents just outside this development. When you take into consideration the other 2 detached dwellings still to be built, you're adding more vehicles to the 17 at the office building. So Wood Lane is at 30 miles per hour and Park Hall Road is 40 miles per hour. However, travelling up Park Hall Road, many cars don't see the oncoming junction with Wood Lane and therefore cause a road traffic collision. Just on Saturday, just gone, 2nd of November, at 8:30 in the morning, a driver did not see the junction outside the premises of this application and drove straight into the houses opposite on Wood Lane, writing off motor vehicles and knocking down their brick walls. This is not the first time that a road traffic collision has happened here, as previously we have had cyclists knocked over due to the poor visibility from Wood Lane and Park Hall Road. With 17 car park spaces, these cars will be coming in and out of the office building premises all day, and it was going to increase the chance of another road traffic collision or even worse, a fatality. With also on Chorley on the Borough Council website, with the majority of the comments looking at the highway safety aspect of this junction on Wood Lane and Park Hall Road becoming more and more dangerous due to the low visibility. All I ask is that the planning committee look into the interests of the residents on Wood Lane and Park Hall Road and refuse this planning application on the following grounds: that the proposed development would have an unacceptable impact upon highway safety and is therefore contrary to policy BNE1D of the Chorley Local Plan 2012 to 2026 and the National Planning Policy Framework. If you're not minded to refuse this application, please at least consider having a site visit so you can inspect the current conditions of Park Hall Road and Wood Lane and see where this development can have an impact. Please, just going to round up.
Finish off, you're all right.
Please don't forget that as councillors, we should take the safety of the residents as the great concern when deciding on planning applications, as it is them to have the greater impact and suffer given if it's approved.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Mr Morris, it's over to you, sir. Oh, sorry, Councillor Singh needs to leave. It was all going so smoothly, right? Okay, Mr Morris, it's over to you now, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I am the applicant in this matter, as you're well aware. I don't propose to discuss the technical aspects of the application. As you've already stated, the planning officer's recommended approval, and LCC Highways have already looked at the matter of the traffic issue and have also supported the application. Just to provide in what I believe is a much needed context, given there seems to be a sad lack of that currently with the application. This is a small development. We're not proposing here to build another Strawberry Fields or a major development. This is simply a small local business, family-owned business, that we have operated for 15 years, some 1,000 yards away from where the current development is proposed, on a derelict site that the family owns 3 generations, that will be used for the family business, which currently employs 12 people locally. So, you know, it's important to me that we don't lose sight of that. The current property, unfortunately, has been sufficiently vandalised over the years that it is not practical to in any way reinstate the current structure. The style of the application mirrors the 2 properties that were mentioned earlier, which have already been approved. It's a residential building in an office form that's capable of taking a small number of people for local use. So we're not looking to profiteer from this. We want to keep our family business on the site, develop the 2 properties next door will be owned by family members when built, one of which is my son, who will take over the business. As you say, the site is not overlooked, and we consider that is a progressive development. Heskin itself, whilst a nice rural community, is not some kind of thatched hamlet here. It's a linear development on a busy road, and it has a considerable number of different types of property down that area. So we see that this particular application is suitable for the area. It doesn't damage the local community. It doesn't encourage the traffic, as those members of staff are already there. Whilst it mentions 17 parking spaces, we're basically talking about, 12 people who would arrive in the morning and leave in the evening and spend the money at the local shops, the local pub, and in the local community. So, with that in mind and that perspective given, I would urge the committee to support this application. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. So, members, it's over to you, Councillor Ainsworth.
Thanks, Chair. I'm more than happy to propose officer recommendations that we accept the application. It's a derelict site and it's going to be redeveloped really nicely. So,
thank you very much. Councillor Southern and then Councillor Snow.
Thank you, Chair. It's a rather interesting development, as I thought. I like the way it's been designed to mirror the existing house, which incidentally I've always rather admired. I lived in Heskin briefly a few years ago, and it's a shame that it's been allowed to go to dereliction. But at the end of the day, we want something doing with the site. And as has been pointed out by Mr. Morris, the applicant, it's simply transferring bodies from, well, you said 1,000 yards away. I would say as a crow flies, it's probably less. So in terms of the traffic argument that Councillor Singh alluded to, I can't really go with that, because it's simply taking cars from one place to another. LCC are quite happy with the display that they've got on there in terms of access. Yeah, there may well have been accidents over the years there. You're always going to get that. And it's largely down to the fact of where you've got traffic merging. And that's more down to people driving the cars than the actual design of the road layout. So I have no objection to this application. I'd be happy to second Councillor Ainsworth's proposition. Thank you.
Councillor Snow.
Not much more to say, but I welcome this. I think it's a good development. It's in an appropriate place. It's great that we can keep business in the rural areas within there. Happy to support this.
Lovely. Councillor Whittaker.
Thanks, Chair. I'm a bit surprised at the comments that have been made. Councillor Singh highlighted the issue. Those of you that know this site, it's at the junction of Park Hall Road and a busy winding road that links from Eccleston up to the Wrightington service motorway junction. It's very busy. Never mind accidents over the past few years. There was accident one last week. A man was knocked off his bike about a month ago. To have a development like this, a 3-storey office block with 17 car parking spaces, adding to the traffic at that particular junction, will just, those of you who know the site, there are 2 double bends. It's crazy. I mean, the site, it was a fine Victorian house. It's deteriorated. It's been allowed to deteriorate, in my view, so that this could come in. I think it talks about, the report talks about trees. One tree with a 6-foot trunk has already been chopped down. So it talks about preserving the environment. The issue here is about highway safety. That's what we're talking about here. And I think I'd like to formally propose refusal, and we'll see how that goes. But if that doesn't go, again, I would like members who are not familiar with the site to go on a site visit, Chair. So I'll make that proposal for refusal first, if I may, see if I get a seconder. And if I get a seconder, we'll put that to the vote, and then I'll propose a site visit if it fails.
Okay, could you just clarify your reasons for refusal? Just put your microphone on now then, sorry, thank you.
Sorry?
Your microphone wasn't on, that's all.
Okay. Councillor Singh referred to it, I think, for the reason for refusal as highway safety, and it's contrary to policy BNE1 in the plan, in our local plan.
Okay, Councillor Platt.
I'm just referring to page, I'll go because it's on its side, page 193, where I believe it's going to come out. There's some Harris fencing just on that photograph with a little white car in the background. That road that it's coming out on, it is 30 mile an hour, isn't it? And the 40 mile an hour is the Park Hall Road, which is the one that causes the problem because the junction isn't too clear at the end of it. But this is well away from it. It's on the 30 mile an hour section. Yeah. Okay.
I believe so. Officers, can you just confirm that? Yeah, yes, that's correct. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Ainsworth.
Yeah, just another comment in support. It's mainly office work, and office work, it's 9 till 5 Monday to Friday. And you've got this thing now with flexible work and hybrid work, and it's not going to be, some days it may not be a high level of traffic. I'm an office worker, so I know myself.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker, do you want to come back?
Well, just on that point, office work is office work. Peak periods are morning time and evening time, when workers are going into the office and they're coming out of the office. I can't imagine that they're staying there all day. They go out for lunch and so on and so forth. So with respect, I don't think that's a realistic suggestion.
Would any other member like to make a comment on this application? I've got Councillor Whittaker has proposed an amendment for refusal for the reasons given by Councillor Singh. I've had a proposal for officer recommendations which has been seconded. Would anybody else like to make a comment on this application before I move to the vote?
What about my proposal for...
I thought you wanted to make a proposal. Yeah, if you want to make one, that's fine.
Well, I wanted to see what... I propose refusal.
Yeah, and it's not been
Before
seconded.
you go to the second proposal, if I don't get a second, I'd like to approve a site visit.
Okay. Would anybody else like to speak to second a site visit? Councillor France. Okay.
I'll second the site visit.
Would any other member like to make a comment on this application before I move to the vote? I'll take a vote for the amendment for a site visit and deferral first. Okay, so I'm going to take the vote for deferral for a site visit. Okay, Taz?
Through you, Chair, so that vote has not been carried, so we'll now vote on the proposal to grant planning permission.
Yep, so this is, we'll just get the tech ready. So the site visit amendment has been lost, so we're now going to propose for officer recommendations proposed by Councillor Ainsworth and seconded by Councillor Southern, so I'm going to move to the vote. Councillor France, you've not voted. If you, it's fine, it's not working, but if you'd just like to maybe explain to me which way you were going to vote on that. Oh, it's worked, it's abstained. That's fine. Okay, so Taz, it's over to you to confirm that.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to grant planning permission subject to conditions for the demolition of existing detached dwelling and erection of a 3-storey office building at 81 Wood Lane, Heskin, Chorley. Thank you.
So, so for the public here this evening, that means planning application has been approved. Right. If you come just for that, feel free to leave, and then we'll get Councillor Singh back in. Thank you. Right, members, we're almost there. It's the last application. So this is item 3E, Armlee, Nurseries, Alpine View, Wigan Road, Clayton-Le-Woods. Adele is going to present this item. Officer recommendation is that planning permission is granted subject to conditions. We do not have any registered speakers for this item, so Adele, it's over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to an existing commercial horticultural nursery business located in Clayton-Le-Woods. That is a wholesale supplier to national supermarket chains. It is located immediately adjacent to the M6 motorway to the west and the A49 Wigan Road to the east, and is located within the green belt. The application seeks planning permission to erect an extension to an existing polytunnel building and a new separate building to allow the business to develop and expand. No neighbour representations have been received, and there are no outstanding objections from technical consultees. This type of development falls within the definition of agriculture within the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, and so meets one of the exceptions at paragraph 149 of the framework from being inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. The proposal accords with the core strategy and the local plan in terms of supporting the rural economy and would not cause harm to the appearance of the area, neighbour amenity, mineral safeguarding, safety, highway safety or ecology. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Members, it's over to you. Councillor Whittam.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very good use of agricultural land, and albeit on the green belt, I propose the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Derbyshire, I think I'll see you next. Yeah.
See no reason why it shouldn't be built.
Lovely. Anyone else want to make a comment? Councillor Southern?
Well, will be seconded. Councillor Derbyshire beat me to it. I actually concur with her findings. It's a good use of agricultural land. Without putting my green hat on, we should be growing more homegrown stuff. So I'm all in favour of it. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Any other member wish to make a comment on this application? Okay, so I have a proposer and a seconder for officer recommendations for the reasons set out in the report. So I will now move to the vote. Taz, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So members have unanimously granted planning permission for an extension to the existing polytunnel building and the erection of a new polytunnel building in respect of Armlee, Nurseries, Apline View, Wigan. Thank you.
No members of the public, you all know what that means. So we're going to move on. So item 4, the appeals report. Adele is going to present that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief because I'm mindful that we've been here a long time, but just to note, there are just a couple of appeals, 3 appeals lodged, and we've had a few appeal decisions which relate to applications that were determined under delegated powers to myself, and all of those appeals have been dismissed. And there's a couple of enforcement appeals as well that are pending. Enforcement appeals are taking a very long time at the moment. So whilst we may serve a notice, it does take a long time to go through due process, I'm afraid. But if there's any that you need an update on, then just contact me or one of the team and we'll be able to give you an update on any enforcement matters. Thank you.
Any comments? Councillor Platt?
I think the dismissals noted there affirm that the officer decisions were right, really. I think it's just testament. Thanks.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you on that one. So, right, item 5, any urgent business agreed with the chair? There's no urgent business other than to let you know we have an additional planning committee on the 19th of December. We will, yeah, Christmas meeting almost. Obviously, we'll be in touch regarding the site visit. It's been a long night. I'd just like to thank each and every one of you for your contributions. Thank you very much and a safe journey home. Thank you. You can do Christmas jump if that's absolutely fine. Thank you. Good night, everyone.